Oh no, your child wants to learn to play the drums?
Oh no!
That's okay, that's great news. The drums are an amazing instrument. In this video, we're gonna talk about why, and we're gonna cover the next steps that you're gonna wanna take if your kid wants to be a drummer, so stay tuned. Let's start by talking about why the drums are an amazing instrument. First of all, tons of kids just gravitate to playing the drums. They're good at it, they have great rhythm, and they wanna do it, so let's encourage that musicality. Next, you're not stuck with the drums forever. Your child may wanna play the drums today, and they may wanna learn the piano a few years down the road. And that makes them a versatile multi-instrumentalist, and that can also be amazing. The drums are also a cool instrument to keep kids interested in music because once you sit down and you play and you hear the sound and the power of these things, they keep kids coming back. It makes you hooked from the beginning on music. So what could be better than that? Next is by learning just a few simple beats, kids can be rocking along with some of their favorite songs. Drums also work in tons of modern music. They work in almost any style. And drummers lead the feel, the tempo, the emotion in a lot of ways, and the dynamics in music. So drummers have a big part to play in music and in bands. The drums are great for rhythm, for coordination. And here's a bonus. Drum sets are super customizable, unlike almost any other instrument. Drummers can put together their own drum sets using different size drums, different size cymbals, more drums, less drums, and you can really make your own instrument, which is super exciting and fun. So how do you help your child get started if they want to play the drums? Well, the first thing is you're gonna need a space in your house or at your neighbor's house.
Nope.
To set up those drums. Just kidding about your neighbor's house, by the way. But at your house, do you want to set them up in the garage, in your child's bedroom, in your bedroom? Probably not. Do you have a separate space, an office, a basement? Make it a space, if possible, where they can have some privacy when they're practicing. Of course, drums do get a little bit loud, so you want to keep that in mind too. But there is great news. There are some amazing ways you can quiet a drum set like that, or even get an electronic drum set that doesn't make nearly as much noise as one of these bad boys, the acoustic drum set. Next, you're gonna wanna get a drum set. So what are you gonna get? Are you gonna get an acoustic set like this, which is a traditional drum set with big drums and metal cymbals, or you can get an electronic drum set, and these have come a long way. If you grew up in the 80s and heard electronic drum sets, they kind of had that digital sound. Well, they don't sound like that anymore. They sound and feel like real kits. So let's talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of both acoustic and electronic drum sets. Starting with the acoustic, they're amazing. I love acoustic drum sets and I play mine all the time, but they're louder. You have to keep them in tune and there are a lot of pieces, but they are less expensive than electronic drum sets. And I think they're more fun to play, but that's my personal opinion. My son loves playing his electronic drum set and my acoustic drum set when I let him. Electronic drum sets are quieter, but they're more expensive. But the cool thing about them is you can change the sound of the drum set, just spin a wheel or push a button, and you can be playing any drum set you can imagine. They're usually a little bit smaller, but they're more expensive. So if you are interested in an acoustic or electronic drum set, check out the description below, and we've put some of our favorites that you can get at sweetwater.com. The last recommendation I have for you for getting either an electronic or acoustic drum set is to check used. If you live in a big city, you might have something like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace where somebody's selling their drums. Maybe they didn't use them or they don't want them anymore, and you can get a great deal on a kit. Next, we're gonna talk about the pieces of a drum set that you'll wanna make sure you have if you're buying one for your child, and how to set up your drum kit. So stay tuned.
Okay, here's what you need. You need a set of drums, and on the bottom is the bass drum, then 2 tom-toms and a snare drum. This is called a 4-piece kit. Some sets can have a lot more tom-toms and other drums, but kids can learn with no tom-toms at all. Just a bass drum, snare drum, and hi-hats are plenty enough to get started with. Next, we have our cymbals. You're gonna need at least hi-hats and then a ride cymbal if you want, and then you can add crashes, and we'll talk about how to set those up later in the video. Then you're gonna need stands and hardware. You'll need at least a hi-hat stand and a snare stand, and then cymbal stands for each one of the cymbals on the drum set. You'll then need a bass drum pedal, then a seat, which is called a throne, of course, because, drummers are royalty. Then drumsticks, and I recommend the drumstick size 7A for most kids. With drumsticks, the higher the number, the thinner the stick. So they can actually start with a 7A, and when they get a little bit bigger and stronger, they can move to a 5A. Those two sizes are usually pretty good for most kids. Okay, next you'll need a music stand, and this is going to be helpful if you put written music, if you put a tablet for online drum lessons, if you even put a phone or whatever device you're streaming music from. You're going to want that music stand. It's so convenient. Next, you'll want to make sure you have a rug if you're going to put your drum set on a hard floor. You'll need a drum key and ear protection. I recommend getting over-ear ear protection headphones for kids. I think they're a lot better than earplugs. And I put a link to some that you can get on Amazon down below in the description. There are many options available that are all pretty inexpensive. Now, I know this seems like a ton of stuff, but a lot of times you can find drum sets that will come with a pedal, a seat, cymbals, stands, so most of these items, and then you'll just have to grab a few extra things. So I actually put a link below to some of those drum set packs that you can get at an online music store, sweetwater.com. So check those out. Next, before you set them up, you will want to tune them. And tuning drums can be kind of tricky. It's an art, but I've got some tips and secrets for you that'll make it a lot easier. So let's start with the snare drum. You're going to want to tune this guy pretty high or tight. The tom-toms will be sort of in the middle, and the bass drum is going to be low or looser. So let's talk about how to do it. We're actually going to start with the tom-toms. You'll have this thing called the drum key here, and it'll loosen those screws, which are called lugs, around the outside of the drum. And here's the easy way to do it. So you just want to loosen them all. So you've got a loose drum head, then put your finger right in the middle of the drum head and push it. And you see all those wrinkles around the drum head? You're just going to want to get rid of those wrinkles. So just go around the drum one at a time until the wrinkles are gone, and then give it another about half to a full turn on each one, and your drum's going to be pretty well in tune. Do this for the top and the bottom drum head, and that's going to be a really great spot, and you don't have to get every single thing perfectly in tune, especially if you haven't done this before. You'll do the exact same thing for the snare drum, except snare drums are usually tuned a little bit higher than tom-toms, so you may want to give a little extra twist after you've gotten the wrinkles out to both the top and bottom head of the snare. And the bass drum's the lowest drum on the drum set, so after you get the wrinkles out, just another quarter or half turn should do it on both of the bass drum heads, and you should be sounding pretty good. All right, let's set this thing up. So if you are going to set it up on a hard floor, put your rug down. Then you'll set the bass drum up first. Pull out those legs and get those little spikes, little spurs out. And just be careful of your floor and all of that stuff. And set your bass drum to the front part of the rug, right up to the edge, because you'll need room behind it for the other stuff. Next thing you'll do is you will attach the bass drum pedal to the bass drum. Make sure it's at the very bottom of the hoop, otherwise it'll lean or tilt left and right when you tighten down the clamp. You'll tighten down that clamp right when it's in the middle, and you should be pretty good with the bass drum. Now it's the snare's turn. You're going to want to open up the basket of the snare drum stand, set your snare drum in, and then tighten down that basket, not too tight around the drum, just so it's kind of touching the edges of the bottom part of that snare drum. Set it up to the left as you're looking at the bass drum, to the left of the bass drum. Then we'll do the hi-hats. So you're going to want to grab your hi-hat stand, make sure it is standing up. It's got that little rod coming out the top, and you're going to put the bottom hi-hat cymbal upside down and just put that right onto the hi-hat stand. Then you take this thing, it's called a hi-hat clutch, and you attach it to the top hi-hat cymbal. You just stick it through the top there and then screw in the bottom part, and take that whole contraption and put it right onto the rod there on the top of the hi-hat stand. And you'll tighten that down so there's a little space between the bottom and top hi-hat cymbals. So when you step on that hi-hat pedal, it closes the two cymbals together. Then you're going to want to put the seat or the throne in place. So we've got Jay here, and we're going to use him to measure our heights. So when your child is sitting down on the drum seat, you're going to want to check that their knees are at about a 90-degree angle or a little bit higher than 90 degrees, but don't go any less. That could put a lot of stress on their body. The snare drum should be between the knees. And when they drop their arms to their side and then lift them up to 90 degrees, if they're holding a drumstick, that drumstick should land in about the middle of the snare drum. Then you know if you've got it in the right position. As far as the height goes, the top of the snare drum can come up just a little bit higher than the knees, and you can angle that snare drum towards the drummer if you'd like to, or it can stay just perfectly flat. Then those hi-hats will be to the left of the snare drum, and the edge of the hi-hats will meet about the edge of the snare drum, or they could overlap just a little bit, but the key here is to get the feet in about the same spot away from the snare drum, so it's a really comfortable sitting position. Comfort is going to go a long way in terms of having fun, enjoying playing, and wanting to practice, making it a fun thing to do and not be, uncomfortable when you're playing drums. So now that you've got this set up, this is plenty to jam with, plenty to play some pretty sweet grooves. Should we hear Jay play us a groove? Let's do it. Jay, what do you got? All right, let's take a quick look at the other drum set pieces that you might have and you want to add to your drum set. The first one is going to be a rack tom. And you'll put that above the snare drum, keep it pretty low and angled slightly towards the drummer. Then if you have another tom-tom, like a bigger one, that's usually called a floor tom, you'll put the legs in that. You'll set that up just to the right of the drummer's knee, pretty close to the bass drum without touching the bass drum. It can be a little bit higher than the snare drum and also angled towards the drummer. If you have a third tom-tom, which you don't see on our set here, but if you do, it would likely go in between these two toms. It would be the middle one. And you put it in between these two tom-toms just to the right of that first tom. So 1, 2, 3 going down, and angle that one towards the drummer a little bit too. Next, if you have a really big cymbal, that's called a ride cymbal. If you have two toms like you see with our set, you can set it in between those toms and pretty low, angled a little bit towards the drummer. And if you have three tom-toms, you'll want to put it between the second and third tom, a little higher than that second tom-tom. It's going to be set up a little bit higher than it would if you only had two toms. And that'll also angle towards the drummer. You don't see it in this video here because we don't have our drums set up that way, but you'll want it so it doesn't overlap the tom-toms too much, so it's got to go a little bit higher there. If you have one crash cymbal, you want to put that crash cymbal above and slightly to the left of your first tom-tom. Don't make it too high or too low, just kind of in the middle at a comfortable spot so it's not overlapping the tom-tom too much so the sticks don't accidentally hit that cymbal when you're trying to play the tom-tom. Then last, if you have one more crash cymbal, which you don't see here on our drum set, you can set it to the right of the ride cymbal above the floor tom, and this will go at about the same height as your other crash cymbal, if not just maybe a tiny bit lower. If you've got all this, or even most of it, or even some of it, you've got a pretty rockin' drum set. Should we hear Jay play us a groove on this drum set with the extra pieces? All right, Jay, take it away. All right, just a quick mention on how you can quiet your drum set down just a little bit. There are silencer pads. They're kind of like, picture them like mouse pads, and they go right on top of each drum. You can get one that's the same size as each one of your drums, and they cover the drum, quiet the drum. They even have these pads for cymbals. If you put them all on the kit, it quiets the whole thing down a whole bunch and allows your kids to play and not disturb anyone. I popped a link to them in the description, but just make sure you get the right sizes for your drum set. All right, I want to quickly mention electronic kits and how to set them up. The reason I didn't do a whole tutorial on setting up an electronic kit is because you're going to set it up pretty similar to this acoustic kit that we just did in terms of positions. You're going to want those drums to be in about the same spots as the acoustic kit. You're going to have some sort of rack with your electronic set, and all the drums will mount to the rack. There will be instructions that come with your electronic drum set. Then it's going to be about connecting the cables that came with that electronic drum set to the module or the brain in the right way. And it's not too complicated. Again, the instructions will tell you just about everything, but those positions are key, and they are the same or just about the same for an acoustic set and electronic set. The electronic set will be a little bit smaller or more compact in most cases. Now that your kids are ready to play, jump over to mymusicworkshop.com and try our beginning drum lessons. We'll learn some great drum beats that get kids playing along with their favorite songs in no time. My Music Workshop is free to try for 7 days, so let's get learning.